another special edition of the UFL podcast, our pseudo first episode, technically our 74th episode. We're just rolling with the punches. We got big news. It's a newsroom, new year. And as you can see, I got some very special guests joining me here today. We'll run through them. Michael Lathrop from the Player 54 podcast. Long time in the making. I know we've been talking about having you on the show, me joining your show. Life comes in the way. We'll talk probably a little bit about that later. Thank you finally for both of us, I guess, having time to make this happen. New year, newsroom, sign us up. James Larsen, our man, insider boy here, MVP of the season, MVP of the decade. Glad to have you here. And, of course, my man who couldn't make the roundtable last time, Zach Keilman. How are you doing today, my friend?
Life's good. Glad to be back on. I know I missed out on, of course, the end of the year roundtable, but that's okay. I couldn't miss this one. So clearly glad to be here. And I mean, I'm with guys that I well respect, of course, in our PFN circles, and those that put in a ton of hard work, even plenty more than myself, if I'm being honest. And James Larsen and Mike Lathrop here. Glad to be talking with you gentlemen today, especially on a day where we now have a lot more clarity on things that are ahead of us in all facets of spring football and what is now the UFL.
Right on. Mike, like I said, long time coming having you on the show. New year, newsroom. We'll talk about the teams coming up. How are you feeling going into 2024?
Well, it's different. I mean, new year, new leaf, however you want, whatever term you want to call it. So here we are. Why not kick it off in a way that is, for whatever reason, not happened time and time again? So here we are, right? New year, new leaf. And weird kind of how these two worlds are official, right? It's happening. So.
Right on. We're finally uniting. James, you've been talking a long time about these teams coming together. There was a few different iterations of the news, but I think the final version is something that you've been talking about for a while. So I guess I'll open up the floor to you. Do you want to go through the big news? What teams do we have? Break it down. What do we got in front of us?
Yeah, so I mean, and actually we kind of went over it on the roundtable the last time around of what we thought was going to be the case, and then it turns out it is. It's an 8-team format here for 2024, which of course at this point isn't much of a surprise given the fact that we thought it was going in this direction for the last month. But, it is unfortunate for a lot of fans who might not have been aware of the fact that this was happening. We've seen some people online like, oh, wait, my Seattle Sea Dragons aren't coming back, or my New Orleans Breakers aren't coming back. But, I'm really excited for what we're going to see here in 2024 because they're sticking with the USFL and XFL branding, just as coming under the United Football League, and now we'll have conferences. I think it's a really genius idea. It's a great way to take advantage of the fan bases of, like, XFL fans being like, oh, our teams are better, or the USFL fans being like, oh, our league is better. Now we get to see what's going to actually unfold this season. Opening kickoff, Arlington versus Birmingham. You couldn't have scripted any better than that. So it's going to be really exciting. But to break down the teams and the conferences, on the XFL side, of course, we have the returning champions, the Arlington Renegades, led by Bob Stoops. You got the DC Defenders, led by Reggie Barlow. You got the San Antonio Brahmas, who now have a new head coach in Wade Phillips. And then you got the St. Louis Battlehawks, call is the law, and they're coming in hot with Anthony Beck. And then on the other side, the USFL Conference, of course, you cannot leave Stallion Nation out of it. Birmingham Stallions back in business with Skip Holtz. Then you got the Memphis Showboats there with a brand new head coach in John D. Filippo. We can finally talk about that, which is nice. The Houston Roughnecks, Gamblers.
I got a note on that later. We need to talk about.
We're going to get to that, but it's the Houston Roughnecks in the USFL division with Curtis Johnson as the head coach. And then last but certainly not least, the Michigan Panthers. They're back in business there in Detroit at Ford Field with Mike Nolan.
So, I mean, naturally, there's some people feeling a little bit left out here. Elephant in the room, I guess. Michael, we'll start with you. Your Guardians, they didn't make the cut. We kind of talked about this a little bit before the show, but I'm curious. Do you plan on picking a new team, or are you just going to be supporting all the teams this year? Still have time to figure that out.
Well, I'm wondering if my fandom is the kiss of death. So I'm gonna
Oh man.
remain a free agent for a little bit.
There you go. Who was your team in 2020?
The Guardians.
Oh, okay. So, okay, I gotcha. To me, I mean, there was a lot of questions around Houston. A lot of people asked me, what was I going to do if the Gamblers weren't here? I said, hey, I'm roughing them up. Doesn't matter what the name is. 12-0. We're making it happen. But this, I think what makes this so interesting and strange is that we have all of the Roughnecks coaching staff moving over to San Antonio to take over for Hines Ward and his staff. Although they're keeping the Brahmas name, I would have expected just move the Roughnecks to San Antonio, bring the Gamblers to Houston if you're going to keep that coaching staff. I understand why they didn't want to get rid of the Roughnecks branding in Houston because, I mean, there is a decent following. I was at all those fan engagement events in 2019, in 2020, and I mean, I know a good amount of people that probably would have still came to the games if it was the Gamblers, but they would have been annoyed and they would have been disappointed, and the team would have to do especially well to win them over, which the good news is we already know they're gonna. The script has been released, 12-0, all in, rough them up, doesn't matter. But the Gamblers are near and dear to my heart. I really hope one day when the UFL is in its 10th, 15th, 20th season, when it's getting up to 16, 20 teams, bring a second team to Houston, and it's got to be the Gamblers or the Swangers. I'll allow them to bring in a new name, the Swangers. Now, I did run a poll on UFL Newsroom over on X to ask people favorite UFL division team, favorite XFL division team. Naturally, the Battlehawks. I mean, the Battlehawks killed it on the XFL side.
Of course.
Surprisingly, though, on the USFL side, it's like neck and neck between the Roughnecks and the Stallions. So you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about that. Now, does anybody... do we think that's just XFL fans rigging the polls? What do we think is going to be the big teams this year? I mean, we have, assuming all 8 teams in all 8 markets, cutting out St. Louis. Who's going to be the surprise market this year? I guess, James, I'll start with you.
Well, honestly, I think to your point there with the poll, I think Houston's an interesting one because now you have Gamblers and Roughnecks fans coming together to support the Gambler Necks, as I'm going to call them on this show today. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that all pans out. You know, a city that I thought was a little bit underwhelming in 2023 was San Antonio. You know, we saw how amazing they were in the Alliance of American Football with the San Antonio Commanders. And this year, they didn't have bad crowds by any means, but it was kind of underwhelming compared to what we saw in 2019. So now with the combined power of Fox and ABC and all these partners coming together in one big, beautiful league, now we have the opportunity for San Antonio to hopefully get better marketing pushes there. And I would expect to see 20, 25,000 at least showing up at those games. The Commanders were getting close to 30,000. I feel like they can do that again.
Zach, what do you think the surprise market of 2024 is going to be? Who's going to be able to compete with St. Louis here?
Well, personally, if we're talking attendance here, Houston, I can see in certain situations. My thing with that is that, look, the Gamblers being a hub team, this is the honest take on it, is that you don't have as much of the local exposure. You have some fans. The Roughnecks were the more popular stay. I actually am going to go with James here. I think San Antonio. And the only reason I'm going to go with this is on some discussions I have had about San Antonio as a market. Now, I'm not saying it's the whole thing, but a lot of fans I've talked to said that it can sometimes be a fair weather market. The Brahmas were kind of a disappointing roster last year. They weren't a very exciting team to watch under Hines Ward. You're bringing in Wade Phillips, very popular Texas guy, very successful roster. You should expect, I would imagine, to see much of that coaching staff to be there from last year. That was a very high-flying offense as well, and that roster should be with them. I like the odds that the Brahmas are going to take the jump, not only as in performance, but that attendance should bounce back because the Commanders, the last successful team in spring football that was really good in a league, That's the audience I expect. I think if the Brahmas are a good team out of the gate, you're going to see those 20K plus audiences like we all thought was going to happen on a regular basis last year. They're my bet right out of the gate. I wish I could say Michigan. I think that's to be determined depending on how they market. I think the Showboats could be on basis if you wanted to say maybe the Stallions. It seems like there's more, I would say regular almost appeal, but I'm going to go with an XFL team because I think the Brahmas, it just makes more sense with you're adding at least a more successful head coach and one that I think already has a proven track record that he can get a team there and has a roster that, depending on who gets cut down in the dispersal draft, is going to keep most of that core with them on the coming into March 30th.
Yeah, I think Wade Phillips is going to definitely help boost attendance out there, especially if he can bring, his winning ways along with them. We saw the Roughnecks last year start 4-0. They made it into the playoffs. Unfortunately, they couldn't get to the championship. This year, it'll be a little bit different, but we'll see on the road to 12-0. But, hey, I definitely think Wade Phillips jumping on board is going to do good things for the Brahmas. Last but not least, Mike, what do you think? Surprise market 2024?
Boring answer, the San Antonio Brahmas. So, for multiple reasons, right? James has alluded to it. Zach has alluded to it. But I think a big part that we, for whatever reason, have not really acknowledged is that when a market gets a team with the AAF and it never comes back, right? Mm-hmm. They were very reserved, hesitant for whatever reason, maybe not to jump all in here with the Brahmas and the XFL, knowing that the XFL had its own track record of being and not being, being and not being. Well, here it is. They have their first back-to-back season. Anybody that was hesitant is not going to be hesitant, or fewer people,
right?
Because now not only is the league their team back, but now these leagues have combined. There's not that competitive league. Which league is going to outlast the other? Now they're together. So I think that whole factor alone, anybody that has been waiting or hoping that is going to stick around and be like, I'm just not going to invest in season one, whether it's merchandise, whether it's gear or tickets and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, my time is valuable to me. And why am I going to kind of invest all in this and get my, hopes all shattered again? So I think that piece alone is a big factor. Now, this is the big boys club. When I look at things right now, Arlington won the championship. It may not look like the big boys club, but they won it. DC, was the team to beat.
Mm-hmm.
San Antonio now is joining the likes of St. Louis, who is the team with the fan base. Coach Beck brought an exciting thing. They just missed out with a 73 record. That they're going to be hungry. That coaching staff is going to be like, listen, we're not going to miss it again. So they're in what I call the big boys club. Right? And I'm not going to cast any shade to the USFL side, but you look at this, Coach Phillips, his staff, his brand of ball he's going to bring in. I think it's going to be a very exciting time in this upcoming 2024 season in San Antonio.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting any way you look at it, especially, that's what I thought was honestly one of the more intriguing things last year with the XFL. It gets some flack, but the three teams in Texas creates this great rivalry thing because you're essentially 3 hours drive, depending on where you live, but you're about a 3-hour drive from any of these locations. 3 hours to Dallas for me, 3 hours to San Antonio. I'm about an hour and a half, 2 hours to Houston. So I'm right damn close about to the middle as you can get. So, case in point in 2020, not necessarily last year, but in 2020, when the Roughnecks went to Dallas, I was in Dallas, right? 3 hours, I'm going to go there. I'm going to support my fan base. And I wouldn't be shocked, too, if we see even some of the old Roughnecks fans start making the travel over to San Antonio just because they might be tied to the team. They might be tied to the coaching staff. I mean, case in point, AJ Smith. That one hits hard. I was really hoping to see kind of the merger of the rufflers, if you will, or what do they call them? The gambler necks? I don't know. But I was really hoping to see that merger where we see, Curtis Johnson, AJ Smith, maybe Wade Phillips is there. Maybe I honestly thought if any of the coaches were going to exit going into this merger, it would have been Wade Phillips. And no, he's actually still in here. It's Hines Ward. I'm actually a little bit surprised with that. I understand it. It is what it is. Now, one of the things I did want to talk about, this league they're talking about it's a merger of equals, but we are still starting to see that, right? So day one announcement, when we got the official name, we kind of already knew it was the United Football League. At least we've heard the rumors, but it was officially announced Sunday, New Year's Eve, during Fox's pregame show. And I mean, it was one of these almost uncanny valley situations where you had The Rock and Danny Garcia on Fox, where it just felt all sorts of weird after, the last year, 2 years that everybody's been building up, creating these rivalries. They dropped the league name, and they essentially draw to the fact that more information is coming tomorrow during ESPN's Game Day. Now, here's where my gripe is. Pat McAfee, I like Pat McAfee, but I don't know why he has to come and punch down so hard on the USFL. You would think they would be promoting these, like trying to hoist them both up as they're announcing the team names, the locations, the coaches, things like that. I'm not going to go into his inaccuracies, but I mean, I'm sure there was somebody behind the scene like, Pat, what are you doing? Shut up, dude. Like, we're one company now. It's not us versus them. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think Pat was just kind of like still in the mindset of he's with ESPN, which is the XFL side. Mm-hmm. I think he probably got a talking to from Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson after that. Like, hey, buddy, listen, I appreciate it. I'm with you, XFL all the way. But we're family now. So we got to put aside the differences and come together here. And ultimately, I think that's kind of a message I think more people need to understand here is that if we want to see spring football last, we got to come together and support it no matter what name it might be.
Right. You can't control Pat McAfee. I mean, this is a guy that's the thing. Like, yes, he's an ESPN personality, but the truth is, dude has been all year on College Game Day saying what he wants to say. This is the guy that decided to go out of his way to talk crap about the two schools that were staying in the Pac-12. This is the same guy that was dissing on Oklahoma State and Oklahoma being a rivalry, which it is a rivalry, by the way. He did not play it up like that. So, yes, Pat is his own character. That being said, yeah, I'm sorry. I also agree with everyone else who's looking at this going, guys, we talk a lot about the unity angle. This is the type of stuff we hope to not continue to see because it's one league now. There's no split. We can talk to the conferences if you want, which I have my own point on that, by the way, and it's not because of how 3-5. Just heads up. I'll talk about that later. But this is a one league thing. I'm starting to kind of almost get a little abrasive on people that are wanting to play this debate angle like we were doing all of last year plus. Because there's no debate anymore. Sorry, guys. That left the station really when we talked about it back in the summertime. It's over. Sorry. I don't know what to tell you. So anytime I see it come up, kind of makes me just tense up a little because I'm like, why are we doing that? What's the point?
I see both sides of it. I think there's kind of a fine line because I think we brought this up earlier. I do like the idea of the built-in rivalry that's not necessarily region-based.
If we're talking football, though, that's the thing. Yeah, sure. Right now, like, we're in one league. If we're talking the football stuff, cool. We're still talking about which was the better. Who cares? It's in the past now. Like, those organizations are one organization. That's what I'm saying to leave behind.
Right.
Let's talk football, okay? That's the thing. We're in the football angle. It's all out in the open. It's January 1st. We are just under 3 months with building the football league.
89 days to kick off. But yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Zach. We do need to unite as a fan base if we want this thing to survive. Essentially, we just saw what can happen is both the XFL and the USFL were both seemingly sustainable. They're coming together. I think there was some hopes that we would see more than an 8-team league. We're seeing an 8-team league. To me, yeah, would I have liked to see more? Sure. Am I happy that there's spring football next year? Yes. Now my hope is that this is these are the magic ingredients, right? You have the great things that work for Fox on the broadcast side and, keeping things affordable, really looking at it from a football focused mindset. And then you bring in the business side of it and the operations side of it from the XFL. Now, the hope is those things gel together. We finally create the spring football league we've all been waiting for. And, 2-3 years from now, we're talking about season 3, which I thought we would be talking about right now with the USFL. But that's the hope. And so realistically, the longer they last, the more chances there are for more teams. And, maybe we get those generals back. We get the stars back. Now I'm curious, and we'll go around the table here. Mascots. Are we going to keep mascots? If so, are the XFL teams going to get mascots? And if they are, one of them has to be the Blob, right? We can't just leave, or the Blob becomes the league mascot. Like, we need to fight for the Blob here. But I guess I'll go around the table. Mike, thoughts on mascots? Do you think we'll see that carry over? And I guess on the same note, mascots and cheerleaders, because I think this was a little bit extra sizzle that the USFL threw in there that you could argue, you don't necessarily need it if you wanted to cut costs, but I always thought the mascots were fun. But I'm curious, what do you think?
Oh man, that's not why I watch football, but yeah, I mean, I get it. You're trying to build future fans with the youth, right? And there's a whole reason why the USFL was very family friendly with their tickets and stuff. So, I mean, I think you want to bring those two worlds together. The XFL is probably going to start getting things that those fans didn't see. And to be honest, I mean, even going to Guardian fans at first, their whatever y'all call it, their gang squad or whatever their G squad, whatever they called it, it was pretty boring at first. And then not boring, probably more annoying, my wife would say, as it went on, when people would still walk in front of you while you're trying to watch a game. So I'd rather have the cheerleaders and mascots in that situation. And if you want to go look on the sideline where they're at versus somebody walking across in front of you on stilts, XFL conference teams, come on, let's join the other one. That's not why I'm watching football, but yeah, I'd rather have that than the side circus that I saw at Orlando games.
Man.
Right on. Zach, what do you think? Do you think they should keep the mascots, get rid of them? What are you thinking?
Look, I'm not going to say I ran into anything like that Mike's talking about. I mean, there's rowdy fans in the Birmingham. Michigan does have them too. Look, I think it comes down to what makes the most sense if they want to spend on it. I know that some things with a merger we've seen, it comes to cost benefit and what makes the best entertainment product for the money. I don't mind it if you can make it work and it's not like some frivolous extra thing. I don't think it will be, by the way. I think the mascots were great for the USFL, if I'm being honest. I like it. It's traditional. That being said, I can live without it. I mean, fun fact, the NFL doesn't have mascots for every football team. There's a select few that do, so you can live without them. Not every football team in the NFL has cheerleaders. This is a different league, of course. I'm listing examples. If you want to go with or without, you can take your pick. But if there's interest in the fan bases, you should listen to the fan bases is how I view it. For example, I actually could say that if you wanted to do it this way, and some Maulers fans will really hate me for saying this, you could really repurpose the Mauler mascot, Marty, and make him a Roughnecks man with the helmet. All you got to do is remove the hammer, and essentially, if you want to give him a drill or give him something that is a mechanic's oil well type of mechanic piece, you can do that. I think you should leave that to the fans, though.
He'll be set. Everyone will know.
I mean, look, just change. They already did it once with the color change last year. Just make it red, white, and blue, and away you go. That's how you would do it. The rest of it, it's up to them. Now, if we're talking mascot fun in terms of bowl games recently, make the Blob like our version of the Pop-Tarts mascot, or like the freaking, or like any of the freaking bowl game ones that make it fun to watch, because that's how I would do it. But you don't have to do it per se. I say leave it up to the fans. Go and ask them, because then you can let the office decide via the fans, was it really that big of a deal to these people watching? But for like Pablo, don't get rid of Pablo. Don't get rid of Skipper. Don't get rid of Stanley. Those guys can stay. At least leave those three. I'll say that. The rest of them, you take your pick. They're all XFL brands is how I look at it. Even though one of them is a team that is not, what I'm saying. The awkward Houston angle is how I'm leaving it at it.
Good old Houston. Actually, I hope Woody Ace, whatever his name is, I just call him Woody. I hope he sticks around. I just hope he's there and nobody really acknowledges him. I hope he just kind of sits in the corner at the games. He's like, I used to be the mascot. Actually, put him in the stands. Just let him sit in like the front row in like the 10-yard, Anyway, I'm talking nonsense now. James, Thoughts on mascots? Should they keep them? Should they get
Speaking
rid of them?
speaking of nonsense, I actually have a pretty good idea here. I think the
Okay.
league should listen to me. Like you said, let's just have one main league mascot and let's make it Blob and let's have him eat all the other mascots, make him an even bigger, more beautiful blob, and have
Fantastic.
one massive blob to be the mascot for the whole entire league. I
We're
think
going to
that's the
Kira
play
with
there.
this.
A
Because
BBB, if
Blob
you
isn't
will.
big enough. Let's make him even bigger, right? I mean, why not?
Yes. A BBB, big beautiful blob. Sign us up all day and night. I don't know. I'll be honest. I've waffled back and forth on how excited I was going to be for this league, but with the news officially out there, seeing it on TV, seeing the social teams kind of just go to town, seeing videos pop up on YouTube, seeing commercials during the games, I'm feeling pretty amped. I'm feeling pretty hype. I'm feeling pretty good about this upcoming UFL season. Spring Stock 3. We know. It's funny. Somehow it feels like the Birmingham Stallions are tied in to Spring Stock every year, and it is purely coincidence. But we know the first matchup of the UFL season, and I went back and forth on if they were going to do this because it feels like it's something they could have held on for a couple weeks to build up to, but no, they're giving people what they want to see right away. Champion versus champion. We have the Birmingham Stallions taking on the Arlington Renegades, and it seems like the game might take place in Arlington, which would make sense because that's where the league hub is going to be located. So it cuts out on travel right away for two teams. So you know what that means, guys. If that opening game is in Arlington, Texas, so is Spring Stock 3. Now, we got more details coming in the coming weeks. That's that's what they do. That's what we do around here, too. Details coming in the coming weeks. But
Give us a moment.
everything's bigger in Texas. I'll tell you that much. And Spring Stock 3 is going to be bigger and better than ever before. And I beg, I plead, and I ask all of you, help us make it a success. We want to show the new league, the old leagues, whatever leagues, that the fans care about this kickoff. We want as many people there at Choctaw Stadium, March 30th. Come and get signed up with us. I don't know who's all going to be there yet. Like I said, details in the coming weeks. Should have information on venues soon. We're working through all sorts of things, but my hope is, Zachy boy and everyone here, is, and please guys, don't do it to me. If Arlington's kicking off day 1, put Houston on day 2. Please,
be nice.
so I can go see them, because I don't want to miss out on my Houston Roughnecks. Roughing
minimum
them up, I can't miss the 1-0.
Minimum we do the Texas Triangle, though.
Yeah.
Is how we could look at it.
Exactly.
One of the other two Texas teams I will gladly take if it's a home game to do the 2-part days. If we can even pull that off like we did last year with Birmingham and Memphis, I will gladly do that if they find a way to do it.
So I'm looking forward to it. I just can't wait to see how these fan bases come together in real life. Like I said, I've been to the Roughnecks tailgates. I've been to some Renegades tailgates on the XFL side. Super friendly. I've been to Stallions tailgate, and I don't know if you can count the Motor City meetup as a tailgate in Detroit. Super friendly on each side. But when you put the little rivalry in there, I'm super excited to see that. I'm curious, especially because the Roughnecks already had a rivalry with the Renegades. But now does that carry over with the same coach as our new rival, the Brahmas? It feels like it should be. I guess that's a good question. Biggest rivalry that we think is going to come out of this USFL XFL division. Mike, what do you think here?
Do coaches determine who your rival is, or is it the fan base? I mean, right? I mean, in the end, it should be who the fans care about, right? Mm-hmm. That's the people paying the bill, so to speak. Right. So I know it may be tough for coaches to get up against somebody that they didn't view as their main source of competition. But I would think whatever rivalries with the brand and whatever people are, but Houston is interesting because gambler people may not view it the same way, but it is going to be very interesting. But I mean, the brand is, the Roughneck. So I don't know. I mean, do I see like anything popping up out of the blue? No, I really don't. I mean, because Houston's they're in a rough spot. I mean, is Memphis gonna look at the Roughnecks the same? I mean, so that's where that kind of also kind of comes down. That division, they might feel like the odd guy out, but then they may not. So that's kind of an odd thing. Yeah, I think when I look at it the other way, that's going to be San Antonio and probably Arlington to really become the rivals. I mean, because if you did have any sentiment against a coach in Arlington, right, and you're like, oh, we got to kind of beat Wade Phillips's boys, not the Roughnecks, that type of thing. I think that's where it's going to become probably more so. I mean, I never got up for who's the head coach or a particular player. It's anyone that knows me and follows anything I say with the NFL, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan, and I can't stand the Buffalo Bills, and it'll always be that way. I don't care who the coaches are, who the players are. I can't stand. And I grew up in Western New York, for whatever it's worth, folks. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I think that's how the rest of the panel here feels about the Packers. FTP, by the way.
FTP, baby.
Zach, so I know we kind of touched on this during the end of the year. What do you want to call it? The last roundtable that we did, but. What do you think about new rivalries coming up between the two new divisions? What do you think we're going to see a standout here?
I think so, and it's going to be to me it's the one game that they're going to play against each other most likely. I know it's not set in the same conference, so you can't see twice in a row, but Birmingham and St. Louis, those two fan bases have been ripping into each other consistently online. They want to see each other play. And I feel like the Battlehawks in particular, fan base there, not only because they are the largest and loudest in the room, but also because they felt like they didn't get a true shake, or felt like they missed out on a tough conference last year being their chance to win an XFL championship. So I think they're one of those guys that feel sour about saying we were better than some of these guys. We could have beat the Renegades last year. And I think they look at the Birmingham Stallions and go, that's the biggest guy in the room. That's not this 4-6 squad that's coming back, or the DC Defenders. Let's see if we could smack around them. And the Stallions fans are sitting here and, they've looked and they're going, I see. You think that we are not capable. You might be sorely mistaken. Let's have some fun. So these two fan bases have been doing a great job building up natural hype for whatever contest comes their way. I think obviously the Renegades and Stallions, that week 1 matchup, champ versus champ, is going to be great. It's going to be one that is excellent to kind of kick things off if you want to do one-offs. If we're talking conferences, though, I mean, usually I'm just going to stick with the Texas rivalries here. I know it's not the same as last like 2020, where you had Houston and Arlington, or Dallas when he called it, in the same one, but I still look forward to that game. I think the Brahmas and Renegades being the same state, you can play that up. And I think because it was brought up in the chat and you brought it up on screen, Birmingham and Memphis was one because it's that close proximity. There were folks from Memphis that were getting giddy about this matchup and thought they could take down Birmingham. Didn't happen the way it went last year, but they get another crack at it, and they're going to play each other twice, just up or down the road from each other.
Right on. Yeah, I mean, to me, the biggest rivalry is going to be every fan base hating the Roughnecks after we go 12-0 and rough them all up. But
drill, baby. It doesn't feel the same as you saying all in, but
yeah, we'll get there. I'll be honest. The second before I say rough them up, my mouth wants to say all in. I'm getting there. I'm learning it. I've already been saying it, but I'm not, anyway, we'll get there. James, before we change subjects, any thoughts on potential rivalries that we're going to see between the XFL and the USFL teams here?
Yeah, well, really quick before I get to that question, I was thinking about, your kind of catchphrases there for Houston. And, given the merger situation, I think it might be safe to say that you could have a merger of your own there. And instead of saying rough them up or all in, what if you go with rough them all up? I mean, you could do something like that. So just a thought. But I had to throw it out there for you there. I might have a new punchline for you. We'll see. We'll talk about it later. But anyways, getting to the rivalries, Zach, I think, hit the nail on the head. I really think the one that we're seeing a lot online is the Battlehawks and the Stallions fans going at it. And a lot of it originated with, funny enough, a quote tweet of mine from Anthony Beck when Gary Jennings signed with the Stallions.
Ooh,
Gary
yes.
Jennings was a wide receiver with the Battlehawks in 2023, and then this offseason he signed with the Stallions. And Anthony was like, what the heck? They can take our guys? And that really kind of started this whole there was some stuff going on beforehand, but this really started the whole online debacle we're seeing now of Stallions and Battlehawks and everybody going at it. We got Luke Miller, our guy, calling out Anthony Becht on Twitter like every single day almost. It's gonna be quite the interesting scenario that's gonna play out here next season, or I mean this upcoming season. I'm excited. I think it's really hard to say which rivalries will be the big ones because we really have to see what these teams look like too in 2024. Like, because we saw like DC and St. Louis, they got into some scuffles last year. Will that happen again this year? We'll have to see. There might be some bad blood remaining. I don't really know. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
Before you go on
go
there, ref, I know I want to say something. I know this isn't my
please.
show, but I just want to say something.
Sign you up.
So that Jennings thing, I get it. Got some people riled up, but there's kind of been this thing floating around for a couple of years now. All right, between XFL, USFL, the XFL took USFL players.
Yes.
You know, the USFL took XFL players. Timeout. This is spring football. Every one of these players played for the AAF, the XFL, then USFL, XFL. Get over it. I don't care what fan base, what side you're on. Get over it. They are not USFL players. They're not XFL players. These are the players that are looking for opportunity, and we're all in the same space. So I just wanted to say it. Hey, if I, piss some people off, but I'm. That's one thing. I'm like, I don't care, Coach Beck. Get over it. It's like this is a space. It is what it is. Now it's one league, so it's just the players. It's the player pool.
Now it simplifies it at least a little bit. Yeah, it was an interesting spot to see that in, but I agree with you, right? It's a spring football pool. We saw, case in point, Cavante Turpin played, it feels like in every league leading up to,
yes.
like within the span of 1 year going into the NFL. I mean, that guy, I have to get a count on how many games he played in a single calendar year again, but it's kind of crazy when you look at it just with the way everything's spaced out. One thing that we did see during the initial broadcast Sunday morning on Fox, we also got a look at the game ball. Tim Capper here, arena fan, sign you up. Thoughts on the game balls? So we saw what seems to be the league ball. I don't know. Are we going to see team balls? We did see that in both the USFL, the XFL. I think the pinnacle, and this is just my opinion preference, I think the best ball treatment, if you will, was 2020 with the XFL. I really dug how they had the different color schemes, the X's on the end. I really dug that. But right now, I don't know. Thoughts on the game ball? Is there anything exciting there? Is it just a football? I'll give you my personal opinion. The game ball doesn't need to be exciting as long as the game is exciting. I mean, what they're throwing, I don't really care what it looks like as long as it's shaped like a football. It's weighted like a football. There's maybe, there was the big debate about the chip, whether or not if the football works like a football, I'm fine. But I know like Seth Lessons, shout out to him if he's listening. He's not on X anymore, but he might be tuning in on YouTube. He's a big football guy, and there's people that are really into the football design, things like that. James, overall thoughts on the football design, or do you think this is even the final one? Do you think we'll see different ones as the season kicks off?
I hope we see different ones, to be quite honest with you. I wasn't all that impressed by the game ball. And to be honest, like you said, it's not really a huge deal. But, I mean, it is an important thing to have a football that looks clean, that looks good, because, I mean, they are used a lot in press releases. I mean, we use them all the time on our website. Pictures of the XFL footballs, pictures of the USFL footballs. Like you said, I think we'll never see a better game ball than what we had in 2020 with each team kind of having their thing. The X, obviously you can't do that now since it's not the XFL anymore. Regardless, I'm not a fan of what I saw. It's just kind of bland to me. I didn't think there was a ton of effort put into it. But at the same time, I think it could be a prototype. I think we could see another ball come. I mean, the Big Game USA, whoever's working with them, I mean, they've had a lot of different game balls that they've been working on. So I'd hope that we see some more down the road.
Right on. Zach, thoughts on the game ball?
Yeah, I'm not certain to say if it is fully a prototype because we are, again, 3 months out. You know, we've been talking about this since July. And they've been pretty private about a lot of what's behind the scenes going on anyway. There's a high chance that could be the look. It matches the silver that they're going with the icon anyway. It's a silverish white in some promo materials already. In terms of the logo on the ball, I think that's the minimum, is at least put the chip on there, like the logo icons, if you want to make it a home away ball. For the collectors in particular, I imagine Big Game USA would appreciate that because they could sell it like that as well. You see, they're already promoting that football. I have a good feeling that might be what you are seeing as the case. Truly, though, as James has pointed out, and everyone I think would be in agreement in, the 2020 XFL ones are going to live in infamy, or not infamy, in fame, glory, honor, whatever you want to call it. Not infamy. That was the worst wording I could use, because they are that damn good. They're legendary is the proper way of saying it. It was great color, great design, great looks. But if they stick with the ball, it is what it is. This is part of the cycle of new league smell, if you will. You know, we got to see all the bits and pieces that make us all giddy about getting the first season going. The football's part of this conversation. So they stick with the UFL ball. I'm not complaining. It's a good football. As long as it's not messing with the players or anything, we're A-okay.
Real quick before I move on to you, Mike. Chris, yes, it is live, but I don't know who's winning because I'm streaming. But do me a favor, in the chat, let me know, is Michigan winning by 7 or losing by 3? Because I am curious.
I'm going to pull it up now.
Now that we've gone through that. Mike, thoughts on the game ball?
I don't care what it looks like. I mean, I really don't, because once it's thrown in the air, you're not going to see what colors are on it. It's got to function. And I have a feeling what we saw is probably the real thing. I mean, I don't know, but with the timetable they've been on, with trying to get through merger things, I can't imagine the game ball has been at the top of the list of trying to sort through the two different business plans and who's going to, survive, and, how are we going to go about the drafts. I can't imagine that they spent too much time in the design phase and working with whoever the partner is of, producing the ball. I have a feeling that's what the ball is going to be, and it doesn't matter what it looks like. I mean, it's going to be a football once it's passed in the air, and I'm not going to see what colors are on it anyway. So, yeah.
Right on.
I think the grander question of this is, are we going to see any tech? That's the one I think everyone wants to know, is really what's anything that's going to be involved tech-wise. Because I know the USFL, we talked about the chips and how the first 2 seasons we had certain discussions about the chips on kicking or how it was being used. Season 2, they implemented it a little farther. Is it worth moving into this united vision? Did they agree to do that or not? That's, I think, is the bigger question. The design's great and all. We can talk about that. But I really do think the tech side of this, what the innovations are, when we start getting into the nitty-gritty, probably later this month, especially going towards minimum training camp, we should know all the other split decision rules. Does that stay? Because that's going to be something that's going to be a, do we pick this one or not type of discussion. And the chip was, in some eyes, a great tool. To other people, it was an unnecessary tool.
Right on. I mean, either way, like I'm with you, Mike. As long as it works like a football, I'm happy. If it starts doing something else, then I think we need a new game ball. Would it be cool if it looked cool? Yeah, I mean, fine, sign us up. But as long as it works, I'm fine with that. I really don't. I mean, I'll kind of wrap things up here. We're probably getting near the end of the show here. But to me, and we kind of touched on this in the last roundtable, but to me, this league needs to be extra careful about those. We all seen them. The tiny, dumb little spring football mistakes. Just the little things. The chicken salad pizza incidents, or the, hey, we're going to announce all 8 coaches. Oopsie, we only announced half of them, and act like that. Just those little, as much of those little tiny things we can avoid, the better, because we've all seen it time and time again. Case in point, we're going into our 6th year in newsroom, which is, again, blows my mind. But time and time again, those things get blown up through a magnifying glass from the people like us and all of the people that watch our shows. And maybe your typical NFL person doesn't necessarily see it, but those generally seem to be the stories that they're more likely to see rather than the positive stories about this and that. So not that they ever go out of their way to make these mistakes, but I'm hoping that there's there's a fine-tooth comb going over everything to avoid it. And hopefully that may have been part of the reason it took so long to get even just the news about the league and all of these teams, is just so they could have all that finalized. Because all I could think about last week when Wade Phillips moved to San Antonio is, if that news came after they announced the teams and the coaches and then all that, that's one of those items. That's one of those stories of, they haven't even played a game and their coach left. You kind of got it done in that transition period. Nobody really notices. People notice, clearly, but I don't think it's going to get called out as much. To me, that's, I think, the biggest thing that this league needs to kind of focus on, other than playing the game. They need to have immaculate performance as far as broadcast and scheduling and all of these things. But if they could avoid those mistakes, especially this first year, it's going to go a long way going into that second, third year. But I'm curious, and like I said, we're probably rounding things out unless anybody else had any other subjects they wanted to go over. So I'll just go through the list. James, and I may have asked you on the last episode, but if you had any other thoughts, what are the things that this new league needs to avoid to be successful, not just for one season, but two and many more after that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question, because I think the last time we talked about what do they have to do. So this one, like you said, what do they have to avoid? And I think it's pretty plain and simple. Like, just don't make the dumb spring football mistakes that we've seen. And I think something that might have frustrated some people these last few months is the lack of transparency that we had from the leagues, right? It was a very, very long process, and players, coaches, fans, pretty much everybody was left in the dark for quite a long time. So I think those are the types of things that hopefully down the road will iron themselves out. And I think it'll be nice to see, now that we have official word on the leagues being merged, hopefully we never have a situation like this ever again in spring football, right? Hopefully it's just going on and on 5, 10, 15 years down the road, a big, beautiful United Football League. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, to your point, I think just avoiding those little things that you don't want the United Football League to at all feel like it's a bush league, you know? I mean, I don't like to use that term, but we've seen it before in the past with spring football, of just things being just really messy behind the scenes or in public, depending on what league we're talking about.
Right.
So, like you said, it's those things that hopefully will iron themselves out. And I will say I do have confidence with the leadership now combined of the XFL and the USFL. I think it's a great thing. I really think that it's going to help solidify a solid foundation for spring football moving forward.
Right on. Zach, what do they need to avoid to be successful here?
Making it not about the football. And that's kind of what I am going to put out there. I understand marketing materials and certain people are very marketable, but let's keep it football first. That is what I've always stressed with any of these leagues. Do not lean into something that is gimmicky or might be a little getting away from the message. And that's a simple thing for any company, any entertainment product. Know what you are advertising towards. It is football first. A good lesson, 2020 XFL. Vince McMahon stepped away. In 2001, one of his biggest mistakes was him being in the focus and being in the limelight in something. Make it about the football. Let the people that run the football and run those positions do their job. We're seeing the great pieces of this on social media right now. And whatever way they merge the social media, this is the most active we've seen any of these accounts do engagement and followership. And I would say just kind of talking to fan bases right now on social that we've done since both of these have existed. And as a USFL guy, I greatly appreciate seeing that. It is nice to know that you are looking like it's going to have consistent people behind the scenes that are working on some things, and that we are not seeing some dead periods for that example. But, make it about the football first. That's how I view it. If you keep it that way, you keep things simple, you make sure you get through the year, and you make sure you do it right where you're not going frivolous, and that you are going and growing the way you want to go. That's how this will all work. At the end of the day, you're going to have to worry about the bottom line. I don't want to talk about it. No one likes talking about this, but at the end of the day, this is the strongest you're going to see for gate sales, for people going to these games. The viewership should jump up. This is the perfect time to do this. Just make it about the football, focus on getting the business right, and we're all going to come with it. We all know it's there now. Give us the quality product like we've been talking about. Don't overthink it.
Real quick before I jump to you, Mike, one of the things that I would say is not a mistake, is the XFL retweeting Ducky the other day. I think that broke a few people's minds, mine included, probably even Ducky's as well. Community legend status checked, sign him up. Mike, final thoughts on mistakes they need to avoid here.
Too often, I get this feeling that alternative spring football is too amateur-ish. You're not amateur. You are professional. These two leagues, with the money that are behind them, it's one. Be professional. Stop cutting corners. I know everything's about the bottom line, but if you have a plan to sell these teams, and I've heard that there are some ownership, or it's already lined up in a couple markets. It's just obviously they haven't bought yet, but they're lined up and they're working on others. Why start, diminishing your own brand? Be professional. Let's do it. Let's not cut corners and give anybody that's giving you the first chance. It's not, you already got people like all four of us. We're in, right? It's not us. We're not going anywhere. But it's the people that come in next. If you diminish your brand and you don't take that one opportunity and lock them in, then why are you even here? Why did you go through all this? Be professional.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I mean, one of the things that, and I've brought this up a bunch of different times throughout the years, but one of the things that stood out to me with the not the original, but the 2020 iteration of the XFL was all of the fan engagement events that the Roughnecks held. They had one a month, if not two sometimes, for a year. And every one of those events, they had a coach there. They had, it felt like you were at an NFL event. They had posters, little placards to sign. They had food and drinks and things like that. They rented out a room. To me, I was like, oh, wow, this is like a legit thing because, nothing against the AAF, but the AAF was so rushed into the field that they didn't really have time to do any of these fan engagement events. And, clearly they didn't get to the season, so we didn't get to see those after the fact. But seeing that from the XFL, I mean, that went a long way for me. And I was a little bit sad that we didn't get as many of those leading into 2022. I mean, with the season kicking off right away, I don't anticipate a lot going into this year, but I hope to, especially if the team is good, plan them throughout the season. Let's get people rallied up. Especially, let's say you're just at the bar where they happen to have an event. You didn't even know the UFL's around. Hey, wait, there's football going on. What do you mean we're 4-0? Okay, I'll buy a ticket. What do you mean? It's $50 for the rest of the season? Okay, fine. I'll buy 3 more tickets. Sign me up, right? So I think that definitely goes a long way. But I think that's probably it for us today. What I'll do here is let's just run through final thoughts and let everybody know where they can find you online. Michael, we'll start with you. Where can everybody find you, and final thoughts going into the new year?
Well, final thoughts. I'm just happy, right? Here we are, 2024. We still have football, right? It may not be what everyone had hoped, but in some ways we are getting what a lot of people had hoped for, the bigger ownership, right? To solidify and create longevity. So, I'm happy that we're here. We don't have that divide anymore. And we have one, hopefully unified vision to make this become a reality for years to come. As far as Player 54 podcast, we're on every podcasting platform. You just type it in, you'll find us. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Player 54 podcast, myself, at XFL Mike for now, but the XFL's got to go, right? It's not the XFL anymore, unless I'm just a conference guy, and I don't know if I'm going to become that. So, but you can find us on anything, Instagram, Facebook, and whatnot. But yeah, give us a like, give us a follow. I appreciate it.
Right on. Thanks for joining us as well.
Thank you.
James, final thoughts on the year. Where can people find you?
Yeah, as Mike said, I think it's exciting that we're going to have spring football here in 2024. I'm very happy that we have some level of spring football. I've always been the type of person that's like, well, some spring football is better than no spring football, right? I mean, obviously, things aren't ideal. Guys have lost jobs. Guys are losing out on opportunities. But at the same time, it's better than if the USFL and the XFL both folded, because then there would be no opportunities and no jobs. So, it's a great thing to see both these leagues coming together. I'm excited. I think, a message that is really important, not just for the leagues, but just for the fans, people in general, is let's remember that these leagues are about the players, right? # for the player. I feel like it's kind of like has to be the mantra of these things moving forward. So, of course, it's so much fun to have the rivalries, to have the banter online. let's keep it professional. Let's make sure we're not targeting players, especially guys that may have been on teams that didn't make the merger, things like that. I think we want to keep let's say professional is basically what I'm trying to say. But the players deserve better. I think that's kind of what I want to say. As for finding me, you can find me on Twitter at James Larsen PFN or on Instagram at James Larsen Official.
Sign you up. And of course, thanks for joining Zachy boy. It's been a fun week, a great week, a good week, the best week. I don't know. It's a week. Final thoughts going into the new year, and where can people find you?
Oh, it certainly has been a week, Ref, and I will say it's going to be an exciting year. It will be quite a year to experience, and one that will not be forgotten, no matter what the story is on the United Football League. For moving ahead, it's simple. Spring football fans, keep supporting spring football. We're in one boat right now. This is one ship. We sink or swim right now, thanks to us. Let's bring people on board and keep growing the Army. For everything else in between, these teams, they need our support. I look at this as a passion for all of us. This is our movement in terms of getting spring football to stick this time, and what has been an endless, for most part, 30-plus years journey, going on 40-plus, that will need to finally work this time. This is the best you're going to get, and this is the best chance to do it is right now, with two combining into one, with strong groups of ownership and interest being brought in, as we have been talking about. So keep on the good fight, people. That's how I look at it. And keep supporting the players in this too. They have been going through quite a, I would say, rocky journey going through these last several months. And it's going to keep being rocky until we get to March 30th. Wherever these guys go, if they do not make it, make sure that you support them, give them the love wherever they go. There are plenty of other alternative paths. Make sure you give them the love and share the support for them. If it's in arena, if it is elsewhere outside of the U.S., they deserve it. They are quality athletes no matter where they go. But yeah, you can find me where you can find the Ref at USFL Podcast and at Zach Keilman for basically every social media for just me, myself, and I.
Right on. And actually, quick correction. Not even limited time.
I know. I'm so used to it. I heard myself.
UFL Podcast, baby. Sign us up. UFL Newsroom. Get signed up. PF Newsroom. Get signed up there as well. And you know what would actually get me super signed up on this New Year's Day? We got 45 people watching the stream right now. If you haven't already, go hit the like button, subscribe, but click the bell. It builds morale, and we need some morale going into this new year. Maybe you lost your team. You need to figure out what team you're going to follow. Click the bell, get some morale. Maybe it'll help you down your journey. Like I said, the next live stream we're probably going to be doing January 25th for the 6 years of Newsroom. So mark your calendar. In between them, we'll definitely be dropping more UFL podcasts. Season 3 of the podcast. Who would have thunk it? And like I said, stay tuned in the coming weeks for more details on Spring Stock 3. It's going to be bigger and better than ever before. Everything's bigger in Texas, including spring stocks. So stay tuned. We're going to have good times, good guests, and giveaways. But until then, I think that's it. Sign you up.